We're going to talk briefly with Congressman Ken Buck about the Iran deal, and then also turn and talk a little bit about the budget. I know that when there are big things in the newspaper, be it the myth of the Christian extremist out there right now, or the some of these other things that meanwhile this other hand is doing some other stuff, and I'd like to get his insight into what's going on what's going on with the budget in Washington D.C. in general. Congressman Ken Buck, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to play a little bit of what the president just said and get your reaction.
The clock is ticking.
Oh. I somehow clicked the wrong one. Forgive me.
The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking.
Well, apparently
this deal shuts down Iran's path to a bomb using enriched uranium. Iran has agreed that its installed centrifuges will be reduced by 2/3. Iran will no longer enrich uranium at its Fordo facility. Iran will not enrich uranium with its advanced centrifuges for at least the next 10 years. The vast majority of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium will be neutralized. Today, estimates indicate that Iran is only 2 or 3 months away from potentially acquiring the raw materials that could be used for a single nuclear bomb. Under this deal, Iran has agreed that it will not stockpile the materials needed to build a weapon. Even if it violated the deal, for the next decade at least, Iran would be a minimum of a year away from acquiring enough material for a bomb. And the strict limitations on Iran's stockpile will last for 15 years.
And also this clip as well.
Today, the United States, together with our allies and partners, has reached a historic understanding with Iran, which, if fully implemented, will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon. As President and Commander-in-Chief, I have no greater responsibility than the security of the American people. And I am convinced that if this framework leads to a final comprehensive deal, it will make our country, our allies, and our world safer.
Congressman Ken Buck, if you could react, I heard a couple of red flags myself, 10-year and also 1 year. I don't like those kinds of deadlines or potentials put into place. What do you think?
You know, the story's going to come out in the next few weeks about what demands that we made on Iran and what demands they met. And I think that's going to be a telling part of the story because my understanding is we made certain demands for admissions about their desire to have a nuclear weapon in the past, and they have refused to answer those questions. I don't know the whole story at this point, so it's hard to tell, but we are basically trusting a country that is untrustworthy in an agreement. And it's interesting that the president didn't call this a treaty because a treaty would need Senate approval. He called this a deal. And that sounds an awful lot like the executive orders and regulations that this administration has been issuing. I'd love to find out if they intend to reduce this to a treaty and present this to the United States Congress for approval.
Otherwise, you're just not going to have the accountability if you don't have Congress on board. I'm like you. The word deal, the word agreement, as opposed to the word treaty, which would require the Senate to actually approve it, is a little bit fishy. Now, I know that making bills or making laws is a little bit like making sausage, not necessarily a pretty thing or very much not a pretty thing. Right now, Congress is in the process of, with the Senate and the House have passed their budgets, so there'll be a consolidation of those and then a final budget that then it will guide the appropriations process going forward. What did you think of the House bill?
I didn't vote for it. I have a lot of problems with the process that occurs in Washington, D.C. and the result. The bottom line was they developed a budget that they say over 10 years will balance. The assumptions that they made were that Obamacare would be repealed this year. There's no way that President Obama is going to sign a repeal of Obamacare.
That sounds like a gimmick.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, that sounds like a gimmick.
It is a gimmick. And the day after they pass a balanced budget, they present a doc fix, a Medicare payment formula for doctor reimbursement and that dot fix added $140 billion to our national debt, and I didn't vote for that either. I think that the problem in D.C. is they think they can fool the American people, and the American people are fed up with this. It's time that we actually balance the budget. We don't have a major war going on right now. We don't have a major recession going on right now. If we can't balance the budget in 2015, when can we balance the budget in Washington, D.C. terms?
I think you're asking the right question. Sometimes it seems to me that when Washington does something, talking about our Republican Party specifically, they sometimes do things that look good. They send out their press releases. They tell their Tea Party friends, hey, this is the best deal we could get, 10 years. But it sounds like the devil's in the details. And in this case, there's a lot more spending and gimmicks going on than we were led to believe.
There's a lot of misinformation, and I think it's well-intentioned people. But the reality is that there are a lot of functions that the federal government shouldn't be involved in, like most of the education programs, most of the transportation, highway transportation programs. And we need to move away from those areas where we can reduce the involvement of the federal government. That won't balance the budget. We still need to deal with the tough issues of Social Security and Medicare. And we're not dealing with those. And until we start dealing with those issues, we are not going to be able to balance the budget in the way that it needs to be balanced. And frankly, we need a partner in the White House. We can't continue this game of presenting the president with a budget, he rejects it, and we have the threat of shutting down government. We've got to one, have the backbone to say, okay, if government's going to shut down, it's going to shut down because you didn't sign this appropriations bill, and two, we've got to have a partner and be able to come to some agreement that balancing the budget is important.
Well, definitely, Democrats have absolutely no intention of cutting any government spending. If anything, they're on the other side pushing for more and more and more, as well as tax increases. But I'd also argue that there are Republicans, sort of status quo Republicans, who say, oh, no, we can't touch the Department of Education. We can't touch the Department of Health or the Department of Energy, arguably three things that one could probably get rid of. What do you find is the percentage of reformers that you know in Congress versus sort of the old guard that says, hey, we'll do some window dressing, but we're not going to do anything serious?
It is a great question. I don't know. It really depends on the issue, and some of it depends on the district that a reformer is from. Most of us are willing to balance the budget as our top priority. There are some conservatives in Congress who will balance the budget as long as it doesn't affect their districts too much. I think that the idea that, and as I said, part of the calculus that the leadership uses is if we take on the tough issues of Social Security and Medicare, the Democrats will use that against us. They will win the majority, and things will get even worse. But at some point, that excuse wears thin. I've heard the president on 5 or 6 different occasions now say, don't blame the deficit on me. Congress appropriates the money. And he's right. And if we can't get that job right, we don't deserve to be in Congress.
Is there any momentum at all to tackle some of the mandatory spending? I'm thinking Medicare, Social Security, obviously not to get rid of these programs, but to put them on financial footing by making more of a public-private partnership and allowing people perhaps to have their own insurance or their own accounts and have it not all run exclusively through the government?
I think there are many of us that would like to see reforms in Medicare and Social Security, and I think that Paul Ryan and the House Ways and Means Committee will develop some of those solutions in the near future, and we'll see exactly how beneficial they are. I think that many of the solutions, many of the reforms we're talking about won't affect the folks that are 50 years and older. They're really designed to make sure that the system is in place. Social Security and Medicare are in place for those that are in their 20s and 30s and are paying into the system now make sure that the benefits are available when those folks retire 65, 70 years.
One of the things that I've tried to teach my students that is it's not just the welfare lobby that ponies up to the trough and says, give us more stuff. It's not just the acorns of the world, but there are farmers, agribusiness, manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, NASCAR, Hollywood. Everyone seems to, come to Congress to say, where's my tax break? Where's my subsidy? Where's my grant? Can you give the listeners an idea of how many lobbyists try to come see you on a daily basis just to ask for more cash? I mean, nobody asks to have their stuff cut, presumably.
No, you're right. I don't meet with them typically. My staff meets with folks, and a lot of the information that they give us is good information and doesn't involve a financial impact. It involves a regulation that has been created by the executive branch, and they're asking for a change in the law because the regulation is unfair or is anti-business, and we work with folks on those things. But there are a number of them. One of the things that I ask folks when they say to me, Ken, we've cut defense too much, we need to raise more money for defense. And I say to them, well, where were the generals when Obamacare was implemented? How come the generals weren't at the table saying, wait a second, if we add $100 billion of spending to our national financial equation, we are going to have to cut from other areas, and it may be defense. Where were the generals when we added the energy costs as a result of clean energy? We've got to make sure that at some point we have a balanced budget amendment so that the different interests compete, and the job of Congress is to allocate the money properly, not just print more money.
Exactly. Right now, there's no accountability, and it's sort of like, it reminds me of that rock song from the 80s, Everybody Wants Some. I mean, it just seems like everyone is showing up and never saying, you know what, how about the taxpayer? How about the $18 trillion in debt? How about we actually, have some fiscal priorities and not simply give everything out to everyone? We only have about 30 seconds left. Sort of what's next with this budget process?
Well, actually, Chris, I was going to ask you if you could sing a few more verses of that song.
I don't know that the listeners want me to be singing.
Well, these 2 weeks, we've been back in the district working on the budget committee chairs and the subcommittee chairs have been meeting in D.C. to hammer out a Senate House budget, and that will be presented to the House and the Senate, and then the reconciliation process starts, and we should be voting on a budget in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I would guess.
Good. Well, I'm glad this process is going forward, flawed as it is, because it hasn't been done for the last 10 years or so. Congressman Ken Buck, thanks for taking some time out today and coming on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
We'll have you on again soon. Have a great day.
Look forward to it. Thank you.